Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International.
Officials in Zambia say that 5 Egyptian nationals and 6 of their own citizens are facing charges this week after a mysterious plane loaded with cash and fake gold was seized, a situation that led to a multi-layered and convoluted corruption investigation. According to reports, the whole thing started sometime on August 13th when the private plane in question arrived at the Kenneth Kaunda airport in the Zambian capital of Lusaka. The aircraft had reportedly flown out of the Egyptian capital of Cairo and was carrying at least 5 Egyptian passengers as well as their pilot and crew. The situation started to get strange when, instead of disembarking from the plane, the Egyptian passengers and crew apparently waited on the tarmac. It was here that they were approached by a Zambian man who was carrying large bags of what appeared to be gold. The man allegedly did not go through the proper security channels and instead is believed to have bribed his way to the plane with cash. Once inside the plane, the Zambian man reportedly began selling the valuables he had brought with him. Eventually, the situation triggered a response from airport security who came to investigate. This is where things start to get loopy. According to reports, after arriving at the private plane, the security team stumbled across the illegal gold buying transaction, also discovering that the Egyptians had millions of dollars in cash as well as a large number of guns and ammunition inside. However, rather than making any arrests, the security officers allegedly accepted bribes from the Egyptians of up to $200,000 each. The freedom that this bought was apparently short-lived, though, as a second security team soon arrived and arrested everyone involved. Things got even stranger when it was revealed that the Egyptians were also being scammed. It turned out that the supposed gold the Zambian man was trying to sell them was actually mostly a mixture of copper, nickel, tin, and zinc. About 280 pounds of the counterfeit gold was recovered from the plane in the form of 602 bars. Even more ridiculously, it seems that no one can be certain just how much money was aboard the plane at the time. Early reports stated that the Egyptians were carrying about $11 million in cash at the time of their arrests, while that number has since dwindled to about $5.7 million. This has led to allegations that the money was stolen by some of those that were supposed to be investigating. As for why the Egyptians were in Zambia trying to buy such a large amount of gold in the first place, no one appears to know. However, the most prominent theory is that the group were involved in money laundering and were trying to get their cash safely out of the country because they fear there is instability within Egypt's current political regime. This theory was backed by reports from an Egyptian journalist who identified at least 3 passengers on the plane as high-ranking military officials within the country. Following his reporting, that journalist, Karim Assad, was arrested without warning at his home in the middle of the night and was only released days later after sustained protests. Authorities reportedly never explained why Assad had been arrested in the first place. At the time of this recording, the whole thing remains a bizarre and intriguing mystery. So far, 5 Egyptians have been charged with smuggling and corrupt practices, while 6 Zambians are facing espionage charges. The situation is still developing.
Authorities in the Swiss canton of Valais say that they are looking for the culprit or culprits behind quite an unusual heist this week, after thieves apparently traversed one of the country's most challenging climbing routes, all to rob a few $100s from a donation box. According to reports, the incident began a few days ago when the donation box in question was found smashed open and empty at its usual spot along the Jamai Pass. The Jamai Pass is a high-altitude mountain route across the Bernese Alps that connects the village of Leukerbad in the south with the municipality of Kandersteg in the neighboring canton of Bern. While the pass is popular with tourists, many of whom reach the area by cable car, the actual climbing route that the donation box is on is apparently no joke. The route is classified as level 5, the most difficult, and is known as a via ferrata, meaning that climbers are required to ascend metal ladders and steps directly bolted into the vertical rock face of the mountain. The process requires constant clipping in and out of various safety lines, and also requires climbers to traverse gorges on narrow steel cables. In addition to all of this, authorities say that the donation box is only part of the way into the journey. The box is at an altitude of 2,350 meters or 7,700 feet, but in order to actually get away with the money, the thieves would have needed to finish their ascent, requiring them to climb another 600 meters or roughly 2,000 feet. Police say that it's likely that the theft was planned in advance, since tools would have been required to actually get into the box. After all of this effort, it's believed those responsible made off with $560 US at the absolute most. Adding insult to injury is the fact that the money the thieves stole was supposed to go to maintaining the Jamai Pass climbing route itself. The protected route is looked after by a local climbing club, none of whose members apparently take any kind of salary for performing their duties. At the time of this recording, police say that they are hoping to solve the case, though the job won't be easy because many tourists came through the area in the days before the crime took place due to perfect climbing weather. However, there is one silver lining to report. After news broke that the donation box had been robbed, a local benefactor apparently reached out to the climbing club and sent them money to replace what was stolen.
A young Australian couple say that they're lucky to have not been seriously injured or killed this week after they went on what was supposed to be a fun camping trip with friends, only to awake to a nightmarish ordeal. According to reports, the whole thing unfolded on the night of August 20th when 20-year-old Brock Momsilovich and his girlfriend Jetta Kinder stopped to camp out for the night with a couple of friends at the Cumberland River Holiday Park, just off of Great Ocean Road. The pair had driven to the site in their 4x4 SUV and had brought along a small trailer as well as a tent that attached to the whole setup as an annex. They went to sleep that night with Jetta set up in the tent with 2 dogs and Brock taking the small trailer. However, things allegedly took a terrifying turn when an opportunistic thief broke into their vehicle in the middle of the night. Still sound asleep, Brock and Jetta had no idea what was happening until it was too late. By that point, the vehicle was already moving, taking them along for the ride. While Brock was somewhat protected since he was inside the trailer, unfortunately the same could not be said for Jetta and the dogs. They were dragged more than 650 feet up the road while stuck in the tent, the fabric from which was quickly being eroded away by the friction from the road. They were finally freed when the canvas from the tent ripped. Jetta was left with cuts and scrapes to her arms and legs, while the dogs ran off in fear. The terrifying situation didn't end for Brock until a few miles up the road, when the suspect drove into the town of Lorne before blowing out the clutch in the SUV. When the vehicle came to a stop, the man ran off with the keys, at which point Brock called 911. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured as a result of the incident, though it's easy to see how things could have turned out much worse. Brock and Jetta were also reunited with their dogs over the next couple of days, thanks to campers in the area who had spotted them and alerted police. On August 26th, authorities reportedly arrested the person responsible for the terrifying ordeal, who has only so far been identified as a 19-year-old man. He is now facing charges including 2 counts of reckless conduct endangering life, recklessly causing injury, theft of a motor vehicle, and driving whilst disqualified.
Authorities in the English county of Kent released a tragic update in the case of a missing woman this week, announcing that a body believed to be hers has now been recovered close to where she was last seen. According to reports, 54-year-old Claire Knights disappeared sometime on August 23rd when she left her home in the village of Upstreet to take a scenic walk with her dog Xiulin. The pair were spotted together near the shoreline at Minnis Bay in the village of Birchington. However, they never returned home. Police were apparently alerted to the situation by Claire's partner, who reached out after texting and calling her friends desperately trying to find her. That same day, the case took an ominous turn when Xiulin was found. The dog was wandering around on its own. A search was launched for Claire, during which investigators attempted to retrace her steps. Her car was subsequently found on a road in the village of St. Nicholas at Wade. It was parked near a country footpath that leads to the waterfront where Claire had last been seen. Sadly, the case took a heartbreaking turn just 2 days later when police were alerted to a discovery somewhere in the same area at around 7 in the evening. A member of the public had found a woman's body. While the remains have yet to be formally identified, they are believed to be those of Claire Knights. Authorities have now closed down a roughly mile-long section of the footpath close to the scene while their investigation continues. At the time of this recording, little additional information has been released about the case, though it has been reported that Claire's death is now being investigated as a homicide. A man in his 20s has been arrested on suspicion of murder, though he has not been identified by name, nor have police specified what evidence, if any, they have found linking him to the case. Claire's loved ones, meanwhile, say that they are in complete disbelief about what happened to her. The 54-year-old mother was reportedly a talented sculptor. A close friend said in an interview with local media that the last time they spoke with her, she was planning to apply for some local fellowships and art placements. The investigation continues.
Authorities in the German state of Rhineland-Palatinate say that they're investigating a tragic murder case this week after a young man was allegedly killed by 2 U.S. soldiers at a popular annual festival. The incident took place in the early morning hours of August 19th in the town of Wittlich, not far from the German border with Luxembourg. The town was in the middle of hosting its annual Saubern Fair, an event which reportedly attracts roughly 100,000 people per year, among them U.S. service members stationed at the local Spangdahlem U.S. Air Base, which is only 12 miles away. According to reports, things were in full swing at the fair until 2:40 a.m. when a scuffle broke out between 3 men. One of them was a 28-year-old German man identified as Michael O., while the others were 2 U.S. soldiers, ages 25 and 26. Police say that they aren't sure how the fight started, though what they do know is how things quickly escalated. At some point, a knife was allegedly pulled out, and Michael was stabbed several times in the upper body. He ultimately bled out from his injuries, while the soldiers were reportedly witnessed fleeing the scene with 2 women. Authorities say that the soldiers were identified the following day, at which point they were both placed under arrest in connection with the case. In accordance with NATO rules, they have been handed over to the custody of U.S. military officials, where they will remain while the investigation into the killing is complete. At the time of this recording, little additional evidence is available about the case. Neither of the names of the accused have been released, and no motive has been put forward to the public at this time. Currently, detectives say that they are conducting tests on a knife that was retrieved from a local river following the crime to see if it was the weapon used in the stabbing. The situation is still developing.
Authorities in Taiwan say that a drunk driver was extremely lucky not to have seriously injured or killed himself or anyone else last week after his intoxication allegedly caused him to drive straight into a speeding commuter train. According to reports, the incident took place on the morning of August 21st when the suspect, identified only by the name Lin, decided to get into his car and go out for breakfast, despite having spent the entire previous night drinking. After getting out onto the roads of Xiulin County, he managed to make it past the first couple of intersections, though his trip came to a sudden and dramatic end when he failed to notice the large red and white barrier ahead of him, the one that was trying to warn him that the 6:44 a.m. Tarako Express train was coming. Instead of stopping, Lin proceeded forward, reaching the tracks at almost the exact same time as the speeding train. The resulting impact ripped the front of his white sedan to shreds before sending the vehicle flying. Thankfully, none of the train's 307 passengers or staff were hurt, and Lin only suffered minor injuries. Looking at the footage, this seems like a miracle, as the situation definitely could have been worse. The incident also caused several hours of delays on the railway network, as the train that was struck had to be evacuated and taken in for repairs, and both directions of railway traffic had to be temporarily moved down to a single line. Following the crash, police took a sample of Lin's blood, which revealed that his blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit. Unfortunately, local reports do not specify whether he has yet been charged in connection with the case.
Authorities in Thailand's Bangkok metropolitan region say that they're searching for a local man this week after he allegedly killed his friend with a sword, apparently believing that he was trying to seduce his wife. According to reports, the incident took place on the afternoon of August 28th at a single-story residence in Phra Pradaeng district just south of Bangkok. The victim, a 35-year-old man identified only by the name Sambun, was hanging around the house and doing a few things when his girlfriend decided to step out for a few minutes. When she returned, she was greeted by a horrifying sight. Sambun was lying on the floor near the entrance, dead, his body riddled with stab wounds. When police reviewed surveillance footage taken from the residence, it apparently didn't take long to piece together what had happened. In the brief window of time when Sambun's girlfriend had gone out, a man on a motorcycle had stopped by. Family members immediately recognized the man as Sambun's friend and co-worker, who they identified by the name Woot. After getting off of his motorcycle, Woot had pulled out a large sword before heading to the house. Several moments later, he was caught on camera running outside and hastily speeding off. While no official motive behind the chilling attack has been released by police at the time, Samboon's nephew told local media that the murder had to do with Woot's wife. Apparently, an unknown person called Woot and told him that he had seen Samboon speaking to her, and this was enough to send Woot into a jealous rage. However, this has not yet been confirmed. At the time of this recording, police say that a manhunt for Woot is still underway.
Authorities in the Danish capital of Copenhagen say that they have arrested one suspect and are currently on the search for another this week, following a shooting in one of the city's most well-known neighborhoods, an attack that police say is linked to organized crime. According to reports, the incident took place sometime on August 26th when two masked gunmen opened fire inside of a building in Copenhagen's Christiania neighborhood. The two then fled the scene, leaving a 30-year-old man dead and at least 4 others injured, one of them critically. Following a search, one of the 2 alleged attackers, identified only as an 18-year-old man, was arrested. He remains in custody, while the search reportedly continues for the other suspect. While almost no other information has been released about the actual shooting at this time, the case seems to be the final straw for many residents of the Christiania neighborhood, who say that they are tired of violence related to organized crime in the area. For those unfamiliar, Christiania is famous both within Denmark and internationally for its history as a so-called anarchist commune. The place got its start in the 1970s when people began squatting in a former naval base and grew from there, quickly developing a reputation as a haven for those with hippie and counterculture vibes. While Christiania has apparently never been officially recognized as its own town, the government has reportedly granted them a fairly large degree of autonomy over the years. Part of this has generally been looking the other way when it comes to things like the sale of soft drugs, particularly cannabis. As a result, cannabis is one of the things Christiania is most known for, and its burgeoning trade on the neighborhood's Pusher Street has traditionally been one of the major things attracting the roughly 500,000 tourists that visit Christiania every year. Unfortunately, what both government officials and residents of the neighborhood now seem to agree on is that the cannabis trade has increasingly been taken over by organized crime groups. This has led to growing violence in the area in recent years, and many residents say they've now had enough. According to Danish media, following this week's deadly shooting, community leaders have decided to close down the Pusher Street market permanently, a decision which is reportedly supported by the government and local law enforcement. At the time of this recording, it remains to be seen what next steps will be taken with this plan. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.